and we have a special show tonight. These are the guys I always bring in when I want to talk about stuff. Three great friends and three most learned brothers I know out here. I'm going to start up here with Dr. William Head down in Nashville, Tennessee. Wait a minute, Dr. Head, so they can see you there. Pastor Davey Tucker, Beach Creek Missionary Baptist Church down in Nashville, and NBA legend Ray Scott, and I'm Ricky Hampton. I want to thank you all guys for tuning us in, and thank you guys over on our YouTube page for tuning in. First time we've done that, so I'll be checking over there if you have any questions or comments. But guys, I had to get you here. And you know what? One of these days, I'm going to invite you guys in here when nothing's going on and we're just going to chop it up. But it seems like every time we get together, I want to get together with you guys when our nation is in crisis. And this is probably the fourth time we've been together because we've been in constant crisis in America today. And I just want to open up by getting your thoughts on the situation that occurred in DC. I'll open it up with Pastor Tucker, Ray, and then Dr. Hayes. Just your general thoughts on what happened yesterday, David.
Man, I'm because there's so many components to what you just asked me. But one of the first things that comes to mind about what happened yesterday was whiteness fighting with whiteness about what's it going to mean to be white going forward. That's how I see what happened, particularly when the president of the United States incites a riot, that I listened to him go on and on and on and on. And then as he ends talking about how Pence will not have the courage and you're going to be down the street, right down the street with the rest of them, and y'all ought to march on down there, and I'll lead the march. And they go straight down the street and they take over the Capitol. And police were not, as I've always said historically, they've not been trained to police white people. And if you watch how that whole thing went down, even the brother who keeps showing up on the tapes of backing out of the rotunda into this stairwell, and he keeps going up, he has some little stick. He keeps flicking it, he keeps telling people to stop. Well, he never thinks about pulling his weapon. But now simultaneously, somewhere else in the same building, white officer said, don't come no farther. He pulled his pistol and he killed that woman because she was non-compliant and they were taking over the Capitol. Now, that should have happened yesterday, maybe 30 or 40 times, because if it would have been black folk, it would have been 30 or 40 dead. And so just the whole reason of why they came down the street for me is the idea of what is it going to mean to be white in America going forward. Now, when you say make America great again, that already predetermines what you're talking about whiteness means. But there's also this other element that seems to have some progressiveness in it that is not in line with that. And so the loss of Trump and all of this, to me, is just the pinnacle of what has been what Trump has basically itched or scratched the scab off of what was already part of the DNA of this experiment called America.
Right.
You know, we've talked very deeply together as gentlemen 2-3 other times. And I've always taken away with me your words, your thoughts, because as your thoughts permeate my mind, like I'm sure mine's, you turn over what I say. And I look for that meaning in a couple of ways. I look for it in how it'll make me better. and more intelligent in my approach. And I look for the intonations that were used so that I'm clearly thinking and listening to your thoughts as you're expressing them and what meaning they're going to have. I knew yesterday when this whole scenario started, I knew we would be speaking. And I think in our old language, we call that kindred spirits. Kindred spirits reach out to one another. Pastor, what you just said, and I've shared this before with many people, I already know. And I already know because it's wonderful when I talk to gentlemen like yourself and I'm left with those thoughts to turn over. And it was turned over in my mind when I heard it originally, that the problem with the United States of America, is that we as African Americans have never, ever had a seat at the table of power. Now, going back to what you said, Pastor, I heard from Trevor Noah, there is an agreement in America of people who come to the table, who we will allow at the table. That agreement simply says, we agree as a society to do these things. And sometimes we call that agreement the Constitution, because that agreement was made by multiple white slaveholders, and that agreement became the Constitution of the United States. In that agreement, if you will note, we collectively, the group that we're existing in right now, we are not included. We don't sit at that seat of power, and they don't mind illustrating to us that we don't. Now, you say, what do you mean, Ray? Well, I always said there's always something that proves to you in a family how you are held in esteem. How we are held in esteem in America can be brought to light in one simple thing. The United States of America, with all of its laws, with all of its lawyers, with all of this Constitution and amendments and rhetorical things that we hear, we still in the United States of America that do not have a law that outlaws lynching. And I use that as my parameter because I will know when we sit at the table of power, when we can protect ourselves and put on that table that we've not been invited to, but put on that table that there will be no way that a lynching can go unpunished in the United States of America. That has not happened yet. Our president, Barack Obama, was never, ever invited to the seat of power and was told that by Mitch McConnell at the very beginning in his first inauguration. They were meeting to say that we are going to have a powerful meeting that says Barack Obama will never sit at this table. In fact, we're going to get him out in 4 years. We're going to make him a one-term president. So all of those pronouncements always come back to me from conversations and things that I've heard as I look at what happened yesterday and say, where are we in this? And Pastor, you are so right. The danger, we knew the danger we were in when we saw the people walk from the microphones and listening to Trump and Gianelli, whatever his name is, Gianni.
Giuliani.
We knew when those people walked down Pennsylvania Avenue unimpeded, oh my goodness, How did we know that? Because we knew that if we walked down that same street to that same building, half of us would be dead.
Yep.
Yeah. Dr. Head.
Dead. And so those are the things that, in my opinion, we try to bring as leaders, as ministers, as doctors, as learned men, as just husbands and fathers. We try to bring to our family to get them to understand this is the world that we exist in, and this is what we're fighting for. And my brothers, the fight goes on.
Dr. Head, you can see the emotion in Ray just talking about that.
I got some stuff I want to read to you that I formulated since I talked to you about being on tonight. The first thing is the definition of sedition conspiracy. Sedition conspiracy. If two or more persons in any state or territory are in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overturn, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force the prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States. Remember that. Prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof. They shall each be fined under the title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. Sedition, treason, seditious behavior, treasonous behavior. Some law professors have said that what happened yesterday is certainly a prima facie case of sedition. The rioters came to the Capitol to slow down or stop the process of certifying the count of the that the Senate was taking itself upon yesterday. That in and of itself constitutes sedition, something against the United States of one, two or more persons. Now, as the number that I've seen since then, they have 55 folks that they have arrested and are going to charge. Now, I will agree with all of you that had that been a group that large of people of color, this morning they would have been counting bodies at the morgue. I can't argue that. I cannot dissuade you from that at all, because I believe you to be right. But let me tell you some of the good things that the president did. You say good?
Good. Yeah, I want to hear this one.
All right, you ready? Let me get to my page. He awakened the sleeping giant.
Yes, sir.
People of color to the fact that they had to get up off their butt and get out and vote. He suppressed the vote so strongly that even some of the people I talked to who said, what do you want to vote for? It doesn't count anything, went to vote. I had a discussion with a young man at the driving range at Ted Rhodes Golf Course who told me that voting was a futile effort, I was a little annoyed. Matter of fact, I was downright mad when he said it. So I walked away. I said, I'll talk to you later. So the next day after calming down, I asked him, I said, son, if voting is such a futile effort, why is the president trying so hard to suppress the vote? If it means nothing, why is he hell bent on suppressing the vote? Next thing, he proved that Black Lives Matter. You know how he did that? He proved how much he disapproves of Black lives. He made every effort to suppress the Black vote wherever he could, whenever he could. He's tried to discredit Black folks, brown folks, yellow folks, all kinds of folks. The Chinese virus, how does he know where it came from? He's not smart enough to get across town. So the issue becomes this man who has no credentials whatsoever in the sciences, who says, well, it's magically going to go away. I thought maybe I had a bowl of Lucky Charms, it was magically going to go away. It's going to be a miraculous situation where we're able to eradicate it before all of this crap for 6 weeks until everybody found out what he was saying was idiotic and past crazy. So he stopped the miseducation of young people of color who thought that they lived in the post-racial American society. All these youngsters go to these major white institutions. Excuse me. All of these youngsters go to these major white institutions. They say, well, if there were any problems, you wouldn't be here. Yeah, but I'm here, I ain't getting nothing. I got a grandson that went to Princeton. I went to Princeton for his graduation, and they had a separate ceremony to give them kente cloths in a building that I wouldn't necessarily want an office in. I thought that was the most idiotic thing on earth until we elected Trump, but we didn't elect Trump. Somebody did. It's amazing nobody voted for him, but he became president of the United States. He united young people against his brand of governance. The young people, Black, white, brown, united in those marches in March and April and May and June and on like they'd never been before. I had somebody to tell me, said, well, white people were always in the civil rights movement. I said, yeah, it was like 3 grains of salt in a whole mountain of pepper. So when you look at the fact that the streets of America were filled with youngsters who absolutely said, no, this is not the way it should be. They did, Trump did what Dr. King was trying to do when they murdered him. He was trying to bring poor people together. The Poor People's March scared the hell out of everybody. He brought all those poor people together, and they realized that they were all in the same boat, even though they lived in different neighborhoods and the color of their skin was different. The whole thing would have turned thin. The uproar would have been insurmountable. So I find Mr. Trump's accomplishments pretty good for young people. He effectively demolished the cohesiveness of the Republican Party. Single-handedly, he demolished the Republican Party. The Republican Party is splintered like a green stick that you break. Part of it is gone, part of it is sticking one way, the other part is sticking the other way, and there's nothing but a skin of the limb holding it together. And it gets worse because the next election cycle, the Republicans are going to try to regain the Senate. Oh, was it not glorious?
Amen.
Them two brothers. Oh, hallelujah. I thought I was happy when Barack Obama was elected. These two brothers came through all of this BS that they handed. Some woman who one I was married to, standing on the street with her hair sticking straight up in the air, talking about, well, he ran over my feet. Police already said that didn't happen, but they found her and got her to say that. Anytime you find a Black man that is ascending, there's always somebody to stick a knife in him some kind of way.
Oh, you know that's coming. You know that. Let me come here and go to our message board. Our good friend Ralph Rivers checked in to say they were invited. We would have been killed on site, talking about what's going on in what was going on at the Capitol yesterday. By legal definition, Agent Orange incited a riot. Donald Trump sure did, which led to domestic terrorism. They say he should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I totally agree with that. But Davey, this man got more than 70 million votes. And this woman that was killed yesterday, 14-year veteran of the armed services, she thought enough of this man to fly to Washington based on a lie he's perpetrating, crash into the Capitol building and lose his life. I don't know what the final number was yesterday, but there'd be 30, 40,000 people there. What does that tell you about this country we're living in?
I think it tells us, first of all, how divided we are, that I think has always been there, but just as Dr. Head was saying, Trump has taught us some stuff, but he's unveiled some stuff. And now he can't put that genie back in the bottle, which is good, because now we have to deal with it. And I have no more quarter for Black folk who not gonna call it how they see it. Assimilation did not work. So that can't be what we need to do. Pulling up pants and all this other stuff has not worked. I mean, so what we need here is equity, not equality. We need equity. And I think this is where the country is being pushed to now, is that we got to make a decision on what kind of country we're going to be, because yesterday, even as you look at how they're showing this woman, they're leading with Air Force veteran. No, she was a rioter and a looter on yesterday. She was an insurrectionist. She was a domestic terrorist. That's what she was. And see, even as we try to process through this and the explanation of it, everybody is mindful that we're talking about what white folks did yesterday. Now, let's not forget how we're treated. That truly shows where the rubber hits the road. And to me, you can't fix something that you never acknowledge. And we have to acknowledge what is so clear right now. Several weeks ago, all the presidents of the major evangelical seminaries stood together to say that the greatest threat to the church is critical race theory. Now, they are presidents of supposedly academic institutions that we all know that theories are constructed. So if you follow the methodology to construct a theory, you can't stand as an academic institution and just say critical race theory is not nothing. You have to deconstruct it through the same methodology. But they don't want to put in that work. They just say critical race theory don't mean nothing. Abram Kendi's work don't mean nothing. Carol Anderson's work don't mean nothing. Many of these Black sociologists who've been adding to this body of work for years don't mean nothing. And they stand as 6 white men, as academicians that can say, I don't have to do the work to deconstruct their work. I can just stand and say that. But yesterday, today, where they at right now? They got nothing to say because American Christianity has been complicit with race ever since this idea of America, and it's showing up over and over and over. Even the Republicans are not coming out as strong as they ought to. Even many of the Democrats are not. Biden's speech today was better than his speech yesterday. He pissed me off yesterday because he sounded like an old white man yesterday. America has we've always come together to do this. We always have not. That is that national mythology that really got turned on its head yesterday. You got white folk who are upset at white folk about what America is and how we're gonna be together in this country.
Right.
So,
Go ahead, doctor. I'm just ruminating at so many things, and so to me, our lives are built in snapshots. As I've aged, I've kind of reflected back in my life, and there's always been a snapshot. One of the first snapshots of my life as a young kid was Emmett Till, when they showed the open casket. And I think I was maybe 10 or 12. Or, I don't know, it was 12 or 16, I'm sorry. And I saw that snapshot has stayed with me. And it's one of the snapshots that come to mind when we talk about our beginning. And then, like, almost as I achieved my adulthood, the snapshots increased so fast, I could hardly keep up with them. There was a snapshot of Medgar Evers. Then there was a snapshot of Dr. King. And then there was a snapshot of Malcolm X. And, when you're a young man and you're in your 20s and you're living in the 60s, and you see these things in your life that are earth-changing, and it's also my people. How do I relate to my people? What do I think? What do I feel? And then you have the snapshot of yesterday. And as I'm looking at the snapshot, and it was alluded to earlier, the snapshot in my mind from yesterday, and there's actually two. On the western end of the parking lot where the east end is where all the activity was. And then you go down the middle, but I guess the east end must be where they park. That first snapshot that I had was of a noose. A noose was hung from a scaffold. I said, oh my goodness. They were going to kill people. They were prepared. They had the wrist handcuffs. They had all the things to do to take. I don't believe that group was very interested in disruption and being rowdy. I don't believe that was that group. The other snapshot was, and it was alluded to earlier, was of the African American police officer with the baton that he didn't know what to do with. The quandary he was in. Do I hit these guys? Do I tell them to stop? Do I stop them? And no, Lord, I will never pull my pistol. That is a snapshot that will live in my watching that man standing, what he must have felt. Imagine all the things he had to think about.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
that moment. All those
That
things.
Say it again, David.
that his training didn't cover.
That's right. No, this was a non-training deal. This was lethal. This was the true element of black and white. Not training, because they're trained to take care. We are militarily in America, we are the recognized enemy. Let us never forget that. We are when you have a military designates an enemy with the Krauts, Goops, whatever. Someone is designated as that's what they train for. We are those people that they train for. That has not changed. But here's a police officer, trained, armed, and put apart. And I said, I'll remember this the rest of my life. Because what that man must have gone through mentally and what he had to be juggling in his head it's going to take a long time for him to forget it. I'm not going to forget it. And I'm not going to forget that noose, because that noose is so, think about this, us as black men, being in Washington, D.C.
At the Capitol.
The capital of America, seeing in Washington, D.C. yesterday, I'm 82 years old, and just yesterday, I saw a noose again.
In 2020.
Mm.
Hey, Dr. Head, you're a former coach, athletic director. Yesterday, at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga fired one of his football coaches
Yes.
for his tweet, racist tweet about Stacey Abrams. And this is a guy who's working with young black men every day as a coach, recruit them. I think he worked at HBCU once. And to know that mindset was in his thinking, what are your thoughts on that?
What was the quote? What did he say about her?
Talked about her weight and
talked about her weight, size, and just being black. That's just the way he made the documentary jokes.
Same way Serena Williams is insulted.
Indeed, the guy that won a French Open years ago just did it the same thing. Discussed some in the same way.
Well, to answer your question, can I make a comment on
absolutely.
the Reverend's revelations? I've got a good friend that I just met 6 weeks ago at the golf course, where the only place I go to hang out, to
good man.
Play golf, and all that kind of stuff. And we came up with the idea that the evangelical Christians sold Jesus one more time for 30 pieces of silver, hanging out with Trump. They simply endorsed anything and everything he did with the idea that they would profit from being in a more powerful position and getting more federal money that he told them that he would do. I'll leave that right there. The thing that has happened, Rick, with this coaching thing is nothing new. What I said a few minutes ago about youngsters going to major white institutions and finding themselves in some major that has no beginning and no end. And once they graduate with the major, it has no application in the world, the real world. University of North Carolina for 30 years carried on a Black history major that had no relevance whatsoever academically and did not qualify anybody to do anything more than be an entry-level person in a janitorial position. these youngsters put up with coaches using the N-word. The guy at Clemson, the man at Iowa.
Yeah.
The odd thing is that somehow we as parents, not me, not you, not the Reverend, not Ray, but we as parents feel like the education that they're going to get at X university is going to be far superior from what they will get at Virginia Union University. Although her or his parents have a degree from Virginia State and Maryland State, who've made it very well in their personal careers, but the schools that they went to are no longer good enough to send their children to. And then when they come home and they don't recognize who their children are because of the attitudes and positions that they take, they wonder why. Situations like this gentleman created are the run of the mill, they're the everyday. When you look up and you see a big splash about a fraternity having a party where everybody dressed up in blackface, it's not just that one time.
Right.
It happens all around them. They accept it and walk on and try to grit their teeth and bear it to be at the university of whatever. My problem is when they get through with those universities, their perspective on who they are, what they are, is real good. Their perspective on who they are isn't. And this is coming from a guy that's only worked at HBCUs, except on a few exceptional times. HBCU education is exemplary for Black youngsters because not only do they find out what they are, but they get an opportunity to further understand who they are. They get an opportunity to be the student body president, not the Black student body president. All of these things that they create to facilitate and make a mockery of leadership on their campus just creates a segregated campus. There's no opportunity for them to grow through interaction with the white students.
Yeah.
Or the school puts together a diversity program and creates a committee to execute it. Committees never make decisions, they make recommendations. If the decisions sit in president's offices, chancellor's offices, dean's offices. So when you go and get a committee, you just make it give you an opportunity to simply say, well, we're researching the recommendation that the committee made. By the time they do that, you're end of the school year and all the people who are worthy are gone.
And here's the thing, you go back to what your thoughts on the predominant white institutions and our roles there. I think of Ray. I was talking with Ray yesterday, one of the greatest high school players to come out of Philadelphia. Ray was not recruited by any of the Big Five programs. And I'm like, Ray, you were great, great NBA career, until he told me they didn't recruit Will Chamberlain either. Speak to that, Ray.
That's always been a dynamic because it goes back to something, again, that was said earlier. The decision had been made in Philadelphia what these 5 major schools were going to do and who they were going to educate. And nowhere on that list was us. So as Doctor, you know, from having been involved in sports, and Pastor, I know you know, decisions at schools, when they get away from academics and they make their sports decisions, those sports or athletic decisions are much different than the academic decisions. But there was a time, and that was not the case. And that was back in the 50s, as I talked about growing up at that time. And I just remember being a kid, graduating from high school, and because I had been baptized and raised Catholic, I wanted to go to a Catholic school. And Philadelphia had 3 Catholic schools: LaSalle, St. Joe's, and Villanova. 2 public schools, Temple and Pennsylvania. And they called themselves, not at that time, but they eventually called themselves the Big Five, because that was a power unto itself, a city with 5 major colleges within its border. And I remember just in my dreams, I want to be a Villanova Wildcat. And so this gentleman drove me out in my senior year after I was all city. And at that time I was 6'8", and I was about 215 pounds soaking wet. And he drove me out, and I go into the athletic office, and I wasn't in there that long because the athletic director at that time, Father, whatever his name is, said, academically, you're not good enough to come to our school. And I'm not sharing like an interpretation. He said, academically, you're not good enough to come to our school. And it broke my heart. And I remember walking across campus back to the car, and I saw a kid. This was just like something I'll never forget. A kid talking about snapshots. I played against him in high school. He was 6'8", and I had outplayed him, and he was on campus. He was a white kid. And I got back in the car, and I just thought about that, and I said, boy, I got a lot of things to prove here. And so I began to think about it in terms of myself. But when I got away from it, I said, you know, Ray, you're fortunate. They have already been unveiled. You don't have to worry about it. They have unveiled themselves, because there was a guy before you, a year ahead of you, that are not walking across that campus either. He's walking across a campus in Lawrence, Kansas. And his name is Wilton Norman Chamberlain. And he too is from the same neighborhood you're from. And those same 5 schools. Now, Pastor Doc, I can see them saying, you know, we don't want this guy, he's too skinny, or he's not fast, or he's this, or that. I can see that, because that's the way they measure it. But doggone it, buddy, there ain't no measurement for Wilt Chamberlain. And there's no reason that one of those 5 schools, and in fact, I said they should put a scholarship together between all 5 of them and keep him in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
That was what I think. Is that what you were alluding to, Rick?
Yeah, and speaking of, Ray, I was doing some research the other day. 1967, Baltimore Bullets versus Philadelphia 76ers. Ray Scott, 29 points, 18 rebounds. I'm sure you guarding Wilt that game, because I looked at the starting lineup. So you playing center against Wilt. So you had a good game until I saw Wilt had 43 points and 25 rebounds.
No shame in that.
I'm saying, I know.
Game, but yeah.
Hey, at least you got yours, Ray.
No, Ray. Hey, Ray. I think Ricky being tacky right there. I really think he's being tacky. Out of all your stats and all the stuff you put up over the years.
Hey, you know.
Ray, you make my Hall of Fame, Ray, if you scored 29 on the big guy.
Oh, I did that a few times.
Ray, I mean, walking double-double right there.
Let's get back to those 5 schools. Help me understand from the table of wisdom we have here. Help me understand what you see and what you guys feel in Wilt Chamberlain not being recruited by those 5 schools, not Ray Scott. See, this is not a tale of woe.
Yeah.
This is a tale of my.
Absolutely. I was in 1970, fall of 1974, I moved to Atlanta to coach at Morris Brown College.
Mhm.
And Georgia Tech had recruited their first black ball player who happened to be the quarterback, a quarterback.
Mhm.
And I watched this young man take so much abuse from his public abuse,
Mhm.
from his coach, the media in Atlanta. And I felt sorry for him because he was in a situation where he was the first.
Mhm.
Then he was first and in the public eye. And he was first and in the public eye, and he was black. So I couldn't walk away from looking at it the same way you're looking at what happened to you and Will. It's in athletics, having been the first black kid at my high school, first black male, there was a black female that went there with me. I knew a little bit about the surroundings of being in a place where you were the only speck in the milk. And seeing him get derided by the print media, his coach making excuses that included his being the butt of the joke, it was extremely disturbing. My time in high school, for some reason, I was too stupid to be afraid, but it was something that, like what you say, the snapshots as you go. One of the dadgumdest snapshots I have is in November of '63, I think it was. I'm sitting in study hall in the library. I don't know whether I was studying or just sitting there, whatever, reading the paper. And I heard a girl shriek. And then I heard a cheer. And I'm sitting there as the lonely little black kid within a half mile. And I said, what in the world is going on? And somebody said, they shot Kennedy. And then I heard more screams and more and more screams, and then what amounted to crying and sobbing. And to see that snapshot of me sitting there with my mouth open and my mind going, what in the world, is one of the snapshots that lets me know that where we are now is not far from where we were then.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You see a sitting president sick his dogs on the Capitol building. How you always had a kid in the neighborhood that kept a dog and always wanted to try to sick him on somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody broke a stick on his head or something. This man, who is supposed to be the leader of the greatest country in the free world, does something so ridiculously harmful that you can't even find words to describe what it was.
Yeah.
We sit here now talking about an event that all the media right now seem to be stuck on what in the world was he thinking about. And the only thing I've heard that makes sense from that is he's the most selfish, egotistical individual on the face of the earth.
Hey, but you know what, Davey? Let me get this in, Davey, because I want you to speak to it. Then you can also go to what Dr. Head was saying. William Barr, where's my little list? John Kelly, Mattis, Lane Child, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. Now he wants to shut him down on, hold him accountable for his lies on the internet. All these guys now see the ship is sinking, so they're trying to jump off. I want you to speak to some of these guys, because even though he's gone, these folks are still here. And,
Yeah.
and they're kind of still here. So
Can you share the screen? Because I got a picture I just want to put up real quick.
Yeah, put it up. Let me see. I have to give it to you, I believe, David.
Okay. You got to give me permission. Okay.
You got it?
Oh, wow.
That's the preacher. His best suit of clothes on.
Yeah, you should be able to share, Dave.
Yeah, you sharp. You sharp, Pastor. You look good.
One of my favorite Negro ministers. That's what I call my pastor, my favorite Negro minister.
Baby, you got it?
We saw it. You didn't see it?
No, I didn't.
You saw it in your right?
Yes, I see it. I'm looking right at it. Now you got to take your mute off. You're muted.
Okay, and then I done showed up another time too. I'm up here too many times. There it is. Okay.
There it is.
All right.
Snapshot.
All
okay,
right.
You got it, Dave?
Yeah.
Tell us about the snapshot, Doc.
Yep, there it is. There it is.
Yeah.
That picture out of the rotunda with, look at this man, look at this flag, look at where he is. That, to me, that was the unresolved business actually from the Civil War. I heard Dr. Head talk about sedition and all of that as it relates to insurrection. If you recall, the compromise made after the Civil War was still around whiteness.
Okay.
They never had to make a loyal commitment to the Union.
Correct.
Who is allowed to still brandish your battle flag? They were the ones who showed up at the White House. I mean, so you can say whatever you want to about these people you're talking about. They know who they've been dog whistling to.
You know
Did
that.
you see Bubba in that flag? Bubba probably don't even have EED. If you listen to him, I understand his frustration. Because if his grandfather is still alive, he can't say he enjoys a social location that his grandfather did.
That's the guy that broke Pelosi.
Here they show up.
Yeah.
And this is part of unfinished business, that if we don't finish it now, this window is going to close back and these scabs will recover these wounds that we've never, ever dealt with. This is an issue around race. That's why yesterday we sat on the sidelines eating popcorn, because even during the Civil War, it was those who knew that slavery was wrong, who happened to be at that time all white, who were advocating, not necessarily always on behalf of us, but even on the half of what globalization would come to mean, because the folks in the South had an unfair business arrangement. Right. And shit, you got free labor. Hell, I'm up north at the textile, I gotta pay for labor. Right. This ain't gonna work. So America's always had this compromising policy around race. And it showed up yesterday. It showed up. It showed up. That's who went down there. It's just not about Biden, but it's about what Trump guaranteed, is that we can make America great again. And for any person of color, the idea of great again is to go back to a place that every day we live in this country is better than yesterday, because we get one day separated from the trauma caused by the day before. Yeah. So again, I'm still unpacking this, man, but them jumping ship, you're trying to save a political career. You're trying to save a political life, but the sheet has been pulled off of you too. It didn't take yesterday for a decent, moral, ethically grounded person to make a decision of whether or not policy or principle versus personality were incongruent. I can go along with his principles and what he's working with around his policies, but him as a person would never jive with me.
Ray, you want to hop in there?
You know, it's just this again, in unpacking all of this, there's just so many things there. But when Davey was talking about that time, that period in the Civil War, and if you recall, the big reward to the South for the Civil War, and it was a reward because they have feared another Civil War, or as General Grant, who became president, feared another Civil War. And that's where the deal was made for what they know, how they knew they were going to have to figure out a way to win and hold on to the power. And they came up with, and when I said it's going to go off like a light, the Electoral College. That was the deal that was made. And that's how somebody, you say, well, how do you elect a guy like this, like 45? You do it not through the popular vote.
Absolutely.
Do it through the electoral vote. And they had it all set up. And now here's the man that wins the electoral vote and the popular vote. We beg people, you, me, everybody, we beg people to vote. So by begging people to vote, the NBA, the NFL, we were begging people to vote. Baseball, please vote, vote, vote. So people listened to us because they saw what we were going against. And 160 million people voted. And a guy says, well, if 160 million people voted and I got 70 million, I'm the guy. No, you can't lose again. You lost last time and got it. You ain't getting it this time. You ain't getting it this time. And he said, the one thing y'all did the last time with the Electoral College, you know, y'all still put me in. I lost, but I still got in. That's not happening this time. And it didn't happen because the people went out and voted. And what he forgot in his ignorance, although 81 million people voted for the other guy turned states around. See, he knows nothing about civics.
Yeah.
And that's why he makes the pronouncements that he makes. He knows absolutely, he missed those civics classes that they had at whatever school he went to. He missed all of them.
He missed all of those.
Yeah.
Am I right? Am I right?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a point on what the good Reverend said. When the Civil War broke out, the greatest Ray hit on it also. The northern business community were complaining that the South was making more money because they had free labor. But the other thing in the South that was happening was that white people who were not rich landowners were impoverished, deeply impoverished, because they couldn't get jobs because the slaves were doing them. So it was a truly economic tsunami, because there were people on the side in the South who were upset because slavery was going on, because it was killing their ability to make a living to take care of their families. And they were white people. These black folks were enslaved and taken care of by the slaveholders. The northern industrialists who were engaged in manufacturing had to pay people to come to work, had to pay people to move their products. In the South, the black people raised the crops, refined them, shipped them, everything. But let's not forget that the Northeast was very lucrative in the slave trade, because all of the shipping companies that shipped slaves, that owned ships in this country, were in up the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Delaware. All of those places where they had ports and shipping companies were the companies that were transporting slaves to the United States. So slavery was not necessarily something that the Northeast wanted to see disappear, because that would definitely cut into their profits. Definitely. So this thing of the Civil War was all about a dollar. Nobody gave a doggone about black folks being in slavery.
Yes, sir.
Huh? They
Yes,
didn't care. That was not at all considered. The problem was that the North said this is unfair, and the South said we're going to do it anyway. So unless you are gullible enough to think that there was somebody who was interested in getting black folks out of slavery, let me tell you now, that ain't the truth. The truth is it was an economic struggle, an economic war to dictate whether or not the South could have free labor.
Let me get to our messages. We just got a couple more minutes left here. My good friend, Michael Robinson chipped in, amen. Ralph Riddle said, Dr. Head, you nailed it on the head. And Natalie said, so true. And they continue to show the clip about she's talking about the young brother, the police officer that was backtracking up the stairwell. And Ralph gave a shout out to the HBCUs. Hey, Ray, you became head coach of the Detroit Pistons in the NBA in 19. I think you took over at 73 when you took 72.
72.
72. There weren't many black coaches around at that time. I believe maybe Russ was. You may have been the only black coach in the league at that time.
It was Russell, it was Al Addles, and it was Lenny Wilkins, and they were all player coaches.
Player coach. So you the only full-time coach in the.
Earl Lloyd was actually historically a guy from an HBCU, which is my mentor. Earl Francis Lloyd was not only the first African American to play in the NBA, but he was the first chief scout. He was the first assistant coach. And he went on to become the head coach of the Detroit Pistons. And he brought me in as his assistant. And he was a head coach for 7 games. And I was promoted to head coach. And I didn't understand how all of that happened. And that requires an examination to understand all of that was moving behind the scenes. But, and because I think there's a story there. It's going to be in my book. But the HBCUs are big to me because one of the biggest protagonists that I had from the HBCU and one of the best ball players I ever played against was Willis Reed. And see, people wanted to say kids from black schools couldn't play. And I'm going from Cleo Hill to the great Earl Monroe, Winston-Salem. And all of a sudden they started, when they got a look at Earl Monroe and they saw what he could not do, what he could do, not only on the basketball floor, but for the community. Everybody all of a sudden stormed HBCU schools where Earl Lloyd began his scouting. So he went to West Virginia Union. Was West Virginia State? He was that guy that opened that door.
But as a black head coach at that time, I'm sure there was a racial aspect of that too that you had to deal with, in addition to trying to just coach a game.
Yeah, the chickens in the north. Yeah, man, yeah. There's
not
always,
in the north.
Yeah, there's always a component to that. I was fortunate enough to be in a city like Detroit, and what gave Detroit to me its fabulous heritage that one day someone will write a book and talk about is Detroit was a union town. Yeah. And so all of the people that came up from Tennessee and Kentucky to work in Detroit, they brought that fervor for freedom and equality. I know, Pastor, you said equity, but equality was a big thing because, you know, people coming from the South, the last thing that they could do when they came north was purchase a home because the banks were not going to give them credit. They had no history. The banks just wouldn't do it. General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler figured out and said, we have these people making all of this money. I know what we'll do. We'll come up with credit unions. And the credit unions are loaning to the people that work right there in the plant. The money comes out of their check before they even get it, the payback. It was genius. And I came here and every black person I saw, all of them had homes. I'm from Philadelphia, where everybody's either living in the row home or the projects. And I said, these people have homes, they have cabins up north, they have motorcycles, they have motor homes. This is an incredible way to live. Lord, I was 22 years old. I haven't left Detroit, I'm still here. It was just a fabulous time. And this occurred in the 60s when the world was changing. Think of a changing world and then having people like us, people of our stature, people like us being able to purchase, having purchasing power. That's what was denied our parents. That's what was denied our forefathers. I saw it happen right here in this town, and that's why I'm still here.
Ray, that's a wonderful story there, because as the same thing was happening, the integration of schools, the integration of the access to public places was occurring in this part of the country. My mother, who every time I think of her becomes that much smarter. My mother asked one of her friends, well, what's going to become of all the Black businesses when all of these people decide to go to the previously inaccessible white businesses to do their business? And I was a little kid, but I heard her say that. And of course, I didn't understand it at the time, but why it stuck with me, I don't know. And as over time, from that point on, observing the decline in the number of Black businesses, viable Black businesses. I'm not talking about the one mom and pop operation with nobody working but mom in the morning and dad in the evening. Viable Black businesses started to decline in my hometown. There weren't that many. So when I came to school in Nashville, Jefferson Street was from 8th and Jefferson all the way to Tennessee State. You could buy everything you wanted, anything you needed, clothes, food, alcohol, everything you wanted, you could buy between 8th Avenue, 8th and Jefferson, all the way out through Central to the Tennessee State campus. If you needed clothes, you could get them. If you need to go to the drugstore, it was there. Need to go to the grocery store, it was there. And over time, that died. And then the city fathers made a decision that after the riots of 1968, when Reverend King was killed, they were going to cut off North Nashville from the rest of Nashville by cutting the interstate right through the middle of the Black community. They had plenty of ways to have gone, but they cut off the Black community and murdered the Black economy on Jefferson Street. They had already put the Black folks off of Spring Street and out of downtown. So the businesses moved north, and then they cut them off at the kneecaps and took another dive economically here in Nashville. Now you can't find, Nashville used to be, what, 3 or 4 clubs, nightclubs up and down Jefferson Street that you could go to any night of the week and have live entertainment. Now you can't find any of that unless you go to the Gulch or anyway, the economic implications of how Black folks have been cut off, their economic lives have been cut off is just ridiculous. I could do the same thing as the bombing of Black Wall Street in Tulsa.
And that's what systemic racism does.
Yes, sir.
Think about gentrification. All that happens in gentrification to increase value is a white person moves next door to you.
Exactly.
Nothing else. Because the power structure of the city shows up when the white person shows up. So they fix the lights in your alley. They clean out the gutters and the sewers so it don't flood when it rains. And oh, by the way, police gonna roll down your street a little bit more. So gentrification to me is just this strange thing that all that happens is a white person moves in. It's not that they move in and fix it. It's not that they move in and turn it into a Big Mac mansion. Literally, the step is that they move in. Which again, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, David. The Nashville flood, I guess that's 7-8 years ago.
2010.
And you worked tirelessly dealing with that. Tell our listeners about that. What went on in the communities there, and how some of the things you just talked about came into play.
It flooded horribly in North Nashville. North Nashville took it hard, and one of the more settled portions of North Nashville, which would be that West Hamilton area neighborhood and all that over there, with some of where most of the people had been over there 25, 30 years, and nice lawns and nice neighborhood. Well,
and this is predominantly Black.
Predominantly Black, which now if you come, it's getting awful close. They moving in over there. But what happened was the allocation of resources to mitigate the effects of the flood were being disproportionately handed out, in that Antioch took it hard. Bellevue was not as bad, but they sent things there. I mean, down to the Red Cross has these, they call them disaster buckets, which is really a bunch of stuff that they give you: a broom, a mop, some trash bags, and this and this and this to help with initial cleanup. We couldn't even get them over in North Nashville. And then when you call out the establishment, it's almost like you'd have done it and you'd have kept doing it as somebody started complaining about it. Even some of the larger Black churches attempted to exploit their own folk during that time.
Yeah,
and to me, it again, we keep perpetuating it, and it doesn't help us to where at some point we got to be hell bent on breaking this cycle because it's in the system. It's not the event. The event is just a manifestation of how the system is set up to work.
now tie that into the tornado.
Right. Right.
Ran through North Nashville, so much so that some of our young folks now started a campaign called Don't Sell Out North, NORFF. You know how people ride around to look at disaster areas? Folk are riding around trying to purchase folks' houses and they've not even cleaned them up. They've not even made arrangements for how they're gonna live while they fix their properties. And folk were flooding to make deals to them right then, trading houses in other parts of town. But again, the city was slow in showing up because it decimated North Nashville more than any other of the tornadoes that came through Nashville. Now, I live over on East Nashville in Edgefield area, up above the Five Points area, which is supposed to be this trendy place, but I've been living here long enough. We were here when it wasn't trendy. We moved here when folks said, why y'all moving over there? So with the money you making on the job you got now, why you moving over there? But we moved over here then. One of the best decisions I ever made. But it took the similar path that the tornado that hit in 98 that put us out of the house for 10 months came the same path. Tore up all these new buildings and all this stuff down through Main Street. Lights were out.
Germantown.
They had these little new boutique hotels. But what they did do is they lined the whole neighborhood with police. You literally could not turn up an alley, down a street that had suffered significant damage without seeing a police car 24/7 with their blue lights on. And again, right now, East Nashville is recovering a lot quicker and faster than North Nashville. North Nashville's lagging behind because you had people who had other life-threatening issues that were going on prior to it. It's almost like, how close are you to the cliff? So that when the tornado comes, it can blow you over the cliff. Now, it may blow me down a little bit, but if it doesn't blow me over the cliff, I'm here. But you have folks that were living week to week, day to day, close to the edge of the cliff. And the tornado blew them over the cliff, but nobody wants to show up. And that's why I use the word equity. Equity says everything ain't equal, but who needs the most gets the most. All you're gonna offer me is about my house, but I had this predatory loan on this house that you're not gonna give me that on what I owe on the house that got torn down, so it's better for me just to walk the hell off. But that's what they want you to do because you created that situation where you won't regulate and control predatory lenders. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know why you brought that up, Dr. Ed. Get me, because now you got me off.
One of the things that I've heard of late, I don't know if you've seen the movie Something Mercy.
Just by Brian Stevens.
Just Mercy. Yes. Gentleman's name is Brian Stevenson.
Yep.
And he runs the Equal Justice Coalition. What is it?
Equal Justice Initiative.
Right. And he said that poverty is not the issue. He said equal justice is the issue. Because just like Reverend said, the people who needed the help most were the people who got the help last. The people of North Nashville, other than Germantown, which I suppose is in North Nashville. I think they're going to change the name of it so that they're not in North Nashville. Some kind of, anyway. But the point is, Tom Joyner a few years ago on his show asked the Red Cross about how they distribute donations. Said when a hazard or a catastrophe strikes, how do you distribute your money? Do you distribute the money that comes in for that catastrophe? Oh, no. We use money that we already have and we put that money into. And he said, well, what if I write a check and I wanted to go somewhere specific? Well, we just send that amount of money out of what we got. And he said, no, that ain't what I want done. I want my money to go. I am through with the American Red Cross. I won't send them a dusty dollar. It is all of, okay, let me give a personal testimony. I give money to St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis. I give money to Fisk University, Tennessee State University, and some others.
What about American Baptist College? I'm going to talk to you about that. If you doing the HBCUs, I mean, you got.
Hey, well, see, I don't have this. I'm not. But anyway, do you know? Since I gave some money to those folks, I have had 82 new folks send me requests for donations. So it makes me angry that my largesse is sent to somebody. Hey, this man gave this much. You might want to check with him. Look up in about 82 different people who are sending me requests for donation. I had so many requests for donation, it filled up the recycle bin that the city provides me. So and again, when the money goes somewhere they want it to go, but not where I want it to go, I'm not good with that.
I hear you.
Hey, we gotta get, man, we could do this.
One thing, real quick, please.
Yes, absolutely.
I'd like a drum roll, and I would like to announce that Betsy DeVos, our health education person, has resigned. That's even a sinking ship. I'm telling you, this thing is far from over. When they start leaving at that level, something's up, because now the DeVos people do not want to be smeared by what this man has done, because they are big players in Michigan. And we're finding out that people find a feeling what this man has done is deplorable. It is deplorable.
You can't get the smell off after you've wallowed around for 4 years.
Right. If I resign 2 weeks before this is over,
Yeah.
I'm going to rehabilitate myself. And man, I tell you, I want to thank all our viewers on YouTube and Facebook. I got so many comments, I can't get to them, but I got to get this one in about from Ralph Riddle, who talked about the rioters at the Capitol think they're the new Confederates. I think you're absolutely right about that, Ralph. And Win-Win gives us a big thumbs up, and we appreciate all you guys for supporting us over the years. Michael Robinson, and you can always watch Michael Robinson and myself and Tim Turner on Tuesdays on the African American Athlete. Fellas, we're gonna do this again now. We gotta keep doing this. We don't do it all the time. We gotta, yes, sir.
Me and the pastor gonna form a union here in Nashville, because you don't call us often enough. Well, you may call him more than you call me.
No. He don't call me that much, because he all up there with, sound like he yesterday. You remember, Ray, when we was on the phone yesterday? He got friends. He got friends.
Right now, we got to kind of, and you know what, guys? And you know what? We got to hit on this right quick. We had this conversation 1 hour and 25 minutes, and we have not touched on what is arguably the most devastating thing that's in this world today, and that's the pandemic. And who does the pandemic impact more than anybody? Us.
Tennessee is the #1 state in the world, not in the United States, not in the Western Hemisphere, but the entire world for COVID infection. And our governor has said, well, okay, some people gonna die.
And our governor, Ray, was, you guys heard about the plot to kidnap and put her on trial here in Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and before they attacked the Capitol building, they attacked the state capitol here in Michigan.
Yeah, they did their dry run here. Their dry run here.
Got what they wanted in their dry run.
Yes, they got inside. Remember, they were not on the steps. This was not on the steps, Pastor. This was indoors on the steps, headed upstairs.
But one good thing, man, that next day, all the legislators who were, well, not all of them, but a lot of them who were brothers and sisters had armed guards protecting them on the way to the State House that next day. So they were not going to just take a stand on that. But David, just your thoughts on that, and then we're gonna get out of here. On our role, the vaccine, and this thing, and just your thoughts.
Well, we again have to, I understand folks' reluctance with the vaccine and all that because of our history. I got that.
Yeah.
But just as you just said, the disproportionality of how it impacts us is a problem. We were already at the bottom of the list as far as health outcomes anyway. We share a large amount of what they call comorbidities, which oftentimes add difficulty to COVID. And so when I hear us talking about not taking the vaccine or not wearing a mask, what I'm finding, more of them tend to be younger. And I think they're just playing a numbers game. After we're moving quickly toward 500,000, we're right at almost at 4. We're right around 4 right now. That we have to protect ourselves because the system that's in play isn't doing it. Here in Nashville, Meharry Medical College, with one of the foremost immunologists in the country in Dr. James Hildreth, who has been running nonstop a testing, the largest testing center here, who is part of the CDC's vaccine approval team. When the governor let out the first group of vaccine, didn't even have him on the list. Didn't have him on the list. And they have been manning 2 testing stations day in and day out ever since this thing started. James Hildreth has displaced the Metro Health Director as the voice to Nashville about COVID. But when the vaccines show up, there is no allocation for Meharry Medical College in Nashville General. Again, systemic racism. It's in the system. So it's not just in policing, it's in all aspects of American life. And again, that's why that picture is so poignant for me. And when you look at that crowd yesterday up there for the speech at the White House before they went down the street, ain't nobody wearing no damn mask.
No, man.
Because they weaponized the mask.
No, man.
They ain't nobody wearing no mask. It's just like ain't no damn COVID, hollering and screaming and shit with no mask on. Man,
Pastor, that's good, brother.
We have to understand that we have a duty and a responsibility to protect ours as much as we can because the system is not set up to.
Yeah.
And when you have, particularly in my line of work, I'm well acquainted with death and sickness. So much of it could have been avoided. I've taken heat because I'm not piling a bunch of grieving people into our church who, through your grief, you forget how we keep each other safe when we're together. So how can I come together to celebrate life, but then create a situation that can put life in question? That don't work for me. That don't work. I love church. I love when people get together. I am so crazy right now. I cannot wait until folks can come back in church. Preaching to a camera, that's not my experience. But we have to be the first folks to take care of ourselves in this, because it's killing people every day. And now what they're showing, which around the country, they're still trying to gather this in, which is going to take a whole lot of time, are those people who have lingering COVID-related issues. Who you got folks who got released from the hospital from because they no longer tested positive for COVID, but they couldn't go home. They had to go to the rehabilitation center. Now they're not getting counted as COVID folk no more. So I could go on and on about that.
Hey, Davey, you have not opened your doors to your church brethren yet, have you? When will you decide to open the doors for service?
When people stop dying like this, when enough of us get vaccines where we can come together, I just do not think that coming together as a community of faith to worship God ought not have no associated health risk attached to it. And that's a theological statement for me. But then you have these folk who are so concerned about their offerings that they say, oh, this is you gonna live by faith or you gonna live by fear?
Yeah.
I don't need no faith if you tell me that the damn stove is hot, I ain't gotta touch it. But that's where we are. And what I also think is it's really showing what a lot of churches are about, that if you are about transformation in folks' life, you don't have to have the big production of worship with the 80-piece orchestra and all that other stuff. Folk are gonna stay with you. I have a small church and we're doing fine. We're under no threat of closing. We're still doing ministry. We did our after-school program this year. We provided laptops and Chromebooks. We've helped folk get hooked up with Wi-Fi because our children are falling behind. We just completed our clothing drive. We've been doing a Saturday thing of helping our older members come into the digital age. Many of them couldn't watch church service on Facebook because they don't know how to get to it. They don't know nothing about that. So we're able to bring them in, train them, and give them a device. And out of that little small church that you come to, Rick, on the corner. So we're going to be all right, because I think as long as you tending to folks' needs, when you treat people's needs as holy, the divine is always in the middle of that.
I think we got us a little mini sermon here to
Get me going. Now, that's one thing I think I can do halfway a little bit, and say something about the magnanimous, radical love and justice of the God of everything. I can do that.
Amen. I'm going to say the prayer.
I
that back head. You look like a good and maybe a good trustee. You probably hold both of them positions. Deacon and trustee, them duly appointed. Okay.
We're gonna get this back together. And oh, by the way, tomorrow night, Michael Robertson and I and Tim Turner, we're gonna have a former All-Pro wide receiver Terrence Mathis on. We're gonna break down the NFL playoffs that start Saturday. I want to send our condolences out to our good friend Wynn, who lost his mom during in November to COVID. So Wayne, God bless you, man. We appreciate you. Hey, fella, this has been fantastic as usual. Love you guys. We're gonna do it again real soon. Take care, everybody. Oh, one other thing. Ray Scott has a book coming out. Ray, when that book drops, we got to get you on to talk about it.
In June.
And I'm always supposed to get out and read it. So I think we got to cover
Me
it.
and you have to get together, and I'm gonna make that happen. Because you know, I do have a petty side of me, and I'm trying not to be petty. But you know, Rick and Ray got this little special thing going on up there. We're not in there. We're not in there.
Well, Ray's one of my heroes, man, from my childhood. So,
hey, Rick.
Yes, sir.
One thing I want you to watch is these university presidents in the next, maybe within the next year, with these young men who are playing sports and coming down with the COVID. And when they start having these lasting effects, somebody's got to pay. And I am saying that these universities that ventured to make money for their athletic programs are not going to be able to justify the suffering of the young men that they hurt. So we see a whole lot of personal injury lawyers show up on each one of these campuses.
Yeah, Ray, I'm looking at a text. One more, and we're really gone. He said you were talking about Earl Monroe earlier. What was it like playing with Earl Monroe and Wes Unseld?
Well, it was a step up because I came from Detroit, where our center was a guy named Reggie Harding or Joe Straughter, and the superstar was Dave Bing. And Dave Bing is nothing to sneeze at. But when I went to Baltimore and I was with Gus Honeycomb Johnson, Earl Monroe, and Wes Unseld came a little bit later, but I really got my mojo back. What I'd lost in Detroit, we became less than a playoff team. And you start out the year figuring you're a playoff team. And when I went to Baltimore, that came back to us. And it was principally because of those two guys, Earl Monroe and Wes Unseld. But Earl was really discounted. You know, they took Jimmy Walker here in Detroit and didn't want to pick Earl Monroe because Earl Lloyd told the Pistons to pick Earl Monroe. And they didn't listen. The Pistons, if the Pistons had listened, we would have had Earl Monroe from an HBCU and we would have had Willis Reed. Think about that.
Would have some earlier championship. Hey, Ray, and I know you told me before, it's always a big question. How tall was really was Wes Unseld?
Wes was about 6'6", 6'7", but he weighed 250, and he was what they call country strong. And the guys, he was country strong.
It sounded like me when I played back in
that was really good.
Yeah.
Hey, Ralph Richard, check out Earl Monroe's piece on Black Magic. We'll be here all night. This is so much fun, but we gotta go. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon. And check us out tomorrow night at 6 p.m. With Michael Robinson and Tim Turner and All Pro